Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Chris with the C. Hope you are doing well. Thank you very much for joining me today, guys. Team Corally Shiroi 1/8 scale short course truck based on the Kagama and Spark platform, and basically Team Corally have answered our enthusiast kind of minds and came up with a short course truck, guys. Epic looking thing, this. As you know, I'm a huge short course fan. I've got several short course here on the channel that I kind of really love and adore. When I heard about this truck coming out, I was over the moon. Now, in this video, what we're going to do though is give our kind of beady eyes over the truck and basically set up the truck for its first use. Now, the reason why we do this, all right, sometimes at factory level things happen. It could be a loose screw, it could be maybe a leaky diff, it could, you know, this isn't just an isolated case for let's say Team Corally. This happens on every single RC. You know, there are things you need to check over, whether it be differential, shocks, maybe set up your ESC, change some settings when it comes to your servo saver, maybe take a little bit of droop out of the truck. Now, that's a key thing I was going to mention there. I've looked over the internet and I've seen some videos recently of people taking them out and enjoying them, and great, but a few people have mentioned, ooh, you know, it grip rolls. Well, short course trucks inherently do this, all right, because essentially you've got a big weighty body on top of your four wheels with a not so wide track on your vehicle. So what happens is the truck kind of dives in on a corner, they're traveling too fast, and obviously the truck will then topple over. But two things there is, one, with a short course truck, there is a style of driving. You kind of come off the power, let the truck kind of come into the corner and then power back out again. So slow in, fast out of corners is normally the aim of the game with these trucks. And also take a little bit of ride height out of your vehicle. Now, if you're someone who's going to be sending this to the moon, which I don't recommend, to be quite honest with you, but if you're going to be someone who's jumping this truck, well, yeah, higher suspension. You'd want to kind of absorb some bumps and this, that, the other, and as you take off, great. But if you're someone who's going to be ground bashing, ripping around on the floor, some light jumps here and there, which really speaking, this is what this truck is all about. By adjusting your droop or your suspension settings and, you know, kind of setting the truck up in a manner that makes sense, obviously, to bring that ride height down, is going to be a good idea. So you're hopefully by the end of this, you guys will have a little bit of understanding with the droop settings. I do this with all my trucks, guys, okay? I kind of have a baseline before I go out, knowing full well that when I go out there, I'm going to have a good experience, and if there is anything that happens to the vehicle while you're out, you have done your utmost really to kind of check over the vehicle and make sure you're going to have a good time with it. I will be fitting my own handset to the truck, okay, and the reason being is of all my trucks and RCs and, you know, everything that I've got is all set up on the one handset. I did mention this in the unboxing. There's nothing wrong with the Team Corally CT2R. I've got no issues with that at all, but I will be fitting my radio link to the vehicle. The electrics package in here is very strong, but there are some fine tuning, and by the end of this video, you guys at home will have your truck set up, ready to go ripping. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let's dive down. Come on then. Right, okay, so we got the Shiroi on the table, guys, as you can see. Now, let's quickly talk about the ride height, what I was on about, okay? As you can see, the truck is quite high, all right? So, and the idea of this is to give it the typical short course / trophy truck kind of look, as the arse, let's call it arse end, shall we? As the back end of the car tucks in as you accelerate away and basically lifting this front end up. Now, as you can see, suspension is very compliant. All right, so there's plenty of movement on the suspension, and with the weight of the body, because obviously they're sitting over the center of the gravity is pushed out over the wheels. All right, this is typical of a typical trophy truck or a short course truck. Now, as you can see, you've got a lot of space underneath those wheel arches. All right, so the idea is, what I'm going to do is obviously bring the suspension down just a touch. All right, to let the car kind of settle down so there's less movement in them corners. All right, and that will actually give you still plenty of movement around on the back, kind of tucking in and dipping forward, but that kind of lower center of gravity is going to help you in corners a lot. Now, let's just take the body off. Looking at the truck, okay, very, very well set up, this, and I mentioned it. The other thing I forgot to mention in the unboxing, guys, was obviously the fact that you've got non-adjustable basher style turnbuckles in you. Okay, so, and that's a good thing because your geometry is kind of set up straight away. I want to look at obviously the suspension and just kind of bring it down, so when the car is settled and resting, all right, I want it to kind of just be flat or just off flat. So if you can imagine, your drive shafts should never really kind of be facing kind of this angle. What you want is just to bring them just down so they're just off dead flat, and just to give the truck that kind of little bit more lower ride height. Okay, so we're going to have a look at that. We're also going to be looking at the differentials. I just want to check my BDI over the diffs. Then we'll be diving into the ESC and going through some settings. I will need to be changing these EC to EC5s. Take the XT90s out because I only use EC5s. And I want to make sure that obviously the BEC, so your BEC, is what controls your auxiliary fans, your power to your servo, that sort of thing. So we'll be doing that. Team Corally do an absolutely awesome job of making basher style trucks. There you go, with the suspension on full push. As you can see, there's quite a bit of angle on there, which is good, don't get me wrong, because obviously those shocks will kind of reach out and go for the ground to give you continuous grip. But it's quite easy, guys. Underneath there are what they call droop screws. All right, so you can take away a little bit of that droop on the truck, which is in turn going to cause the truck to kind of settle down a little bit in corners, so that's a good thing. I'm going to get some tools. I want to get a battery, because when you're setting your suspension up, you should always have the truck fully loaded. And we'll start diving into the centre diff. Then we're going to have a look at the front and rear diffs, which, to be honest with you, I've never really had to top up the diffs on any of my Team Corally trucks, but I'm just going to check over. I want to check over the screws on the differentials just to make sure that doesn't leak. And then we'll move on. We'll take one shock off. If I like what I see on the shocks, we'll just call that a day. But you can, essentially, whatever I go to do on one shock, you could do on all 4 shocks and just check it all out. And then we'll have a look at the differentials. And by the end of this, you should have a truck that's absolutely awesome. Right, okay, so first things first, guys. Obviously, we're going to remove, the centre diff from the vehicle, okay? So what I want to do is just basically get this centre diff out. Now, I use a little pair of tweezers, because there are these little... Let me just get one off for you, but here. There are these little rubber retainers, O-rings. There you go. All right, small O-rings at the back of this pin, which comes out here. All right, like so. Make sure you're keeping them safe. All right, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Like so. Now, I will say, I'm not a fan of these O-rings. They are a pain in my backside, and if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of O-rings lying about, this could prove to be a bit of a pain in the backside for you. Now, what they have done, instead of having, let's say, a nut and bolt through there to hold it all in place, they have decided to go with this O-ring setup, and it's the same on every single Team Corally car. Some of them come out great, some of them don't. Okay, so yeah, so basically just getting that O-ring off, and then that'll release your top brace. Remember, the longer piece is heading towards the battery tray, so that then gives you access to the diff itself. On top, you have 2 screws, obviously, for your pinion cover. You've got screw there. You will need a 2.5 to remove the centre brace here. All right, like so. As you can see, there's a screw there. And it's the same on this side here. And all we're doing is taking the centre diff out so we can actually check the differential oils. And also I want to check the screws on the diff itself. There you go, there's the other one. Now, that will essentially lift up. But what you are going to have to do is remove this brace here. So there's 2mm screws. I'm going to use my driver. I'm going to put you on a time lapse. Let's get into the diff here. Just essentially all we're doing is removing the screws from here and removing the bracing. Right, okay guys, so let's remove the centre diff. Just going to remove this part here. So you got a little piece of plastic at the front then, that's obviously your bearing carrier. And then just wiggle it up like so. Make sure you leave your drive shafts. Now, I have noticed this differential has got a little bit of weeping at the bottom there. I'm going to show you with the camera in a second. So this is quite common on shipping. What happens with these trucks is obviously they get shipped over via air, and then obviously the compression, and then there you go. You can actually see it on the differential there. See that there, guys? So it's actually leaking from a diff. So I'm glad I opened this up straight away. I have noticed a slight issue. This is quite common on most trucks I get though. It was hidden underneath the spur gear. But yeah, just like so. So there's something we're going to tackle straight away. I'm going to pause 2 secs, clean that up, and then we'll open the differential up and check it. Right, okay, so we've got the differential, but there, guys, I've just cleaned it all up. I've cleaned inside the car. As you can see, there's still a bit of weep in there, so we're going to wipe that off. We're going to re-lock that, open this up, check the fluids, top it back up again, and then re-add Loctite to it. But this is quite common. It's not an isolated case, this, and it's something I would recommend you definitely checking over your vehicle. As I say, things happen when in the process of shipping to you. Some people might have seen that as a fault. It's not essentially a fault, guys, or anything like that. This happens because of pressure. The vehicles get shipped. Obviously, they've topped up at factory level, and then the pressurization of them being shipped over, essentially come over on a big cargo plane. When they're up in the air, obviously that fluid is trying to get out somewhere. So let's go to page, where we at? Let's have a look. Differentials, front, center diff. Right, okay. They're saying for bashing, center diff is 100k. Now, I like my diffs a little bit stiffer than that. 100k is fine, but so I am going to be adding some 250 to the center of this, just to kind of get all 4 wheels spinning up at the same time. I'm going to leave what's inside there, but top it up with 250. So again, very easy. If you go to page 13, it actually gives you all the fluid levels and everything to go from there. So center diff, front diff, let's have a look, is 20k, center diff's 100k, rear is 10k. So I'm going to get my fluids now. I'm going to pause 2 seconds. I'll open the differentials up and I'll show you. So we have the differential open, guys. As you can see, there is some fluid in there. This is not the worst I've seen. It's not bone dry or anything like that. But we are going to be adding some of the Team Corally 250,000 CST diff syrup. I'm just going to thicken it up ever so slightly. We want it around about 75%. That's what they're recommending. All right, so essentially just pour your diff fluid in. Make sure you're missing out the holes where the screws go into. You will be needing some thread lock for this as well, guys. Okay, so when you put your screws back in, make sure you're thread locking them back up. And all we're going to do is top this back up. In fact, I'm going to do it this way because 250 is quite thick. And then we're just going to top up enough. That should be enough, but there, just a blob. And what you want to do now is essentially just walk away from the vehicle for like 20 minutes and let that diff fluid settle down into the gears, and then just check it over again, okay? So just scrape that off like so, and then we're going to essentially just move the diff fluids back into the case like that. There you go. So what we're going to do now is obviously let that settle down. If you've got somewhere warm, put it there, because obviously the diff fluids will thin out slightly and you'll get your diff levels a little bit quicker than at the moment. You're in Wales. It is quite cold, so yeah, it might take a little bit longer, but yeah, essentially what you're looking at is like that, guys. Can you see that? There you go. Right, gonna let that settle down, then we're gonna re-add the gearing back in, re-add the screws, re-Loctite it back up, and then I'm gonna get you guys to check the screws on the rear as well, because sometimes it leaks from the rear of the diff. This happens, as I say, whether it be Team Corally, whether it be Armour, whether it be Team Associate, everything. Always check your fluids on your diffs before you take it out, because essentially that was going to be, I wouldn't call it bone dry, but yeah, it could be a lot more. And differential fluids are important. One, to keep temperature down on the gears. Two, to give you the right viscosity and the way the power is transferred to front and rear on your diff case. So yeah, let's carry on. Right, okay, so as you can see, guys, I have differentials in front of me. This one I've now topped up with 250,000 CST. There are some bubbles still waiting to come out, but I am happy with the diff level there. As you can see, it's just about crowning. Team Corally says 75%. I just go just a touch more myself personally. And there are the fluids we mentioned earlier on, okay, 20,000, 100 and 10. So I am just going to leave that settle down, let all the bubbles come out now, and then we're going to re-add Loctite. I use just a thread locker. I use this one in particular, medium strength thread locker, and we're going to re-add the screws in. Now, as I say, make sure you've got a clean cloth just to clean around where the screws are. You don't want any diff fluid going in there, because essentially that will stop, obviously, your thread locker from setting. I would recommend you doing this 24 hours before you actually go out and take your truck for the first time. But it's quite important to check these differentials, because as I say, this essentially is cooling for the gears and will also give you the right amount of power transfer for the front and rear. So essentially check over all your differentials. But that's that there. We're going to let it settle down a bit more, and I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, so just putting the differential back together, guys. I've given it a little bit of time. Obviously, make sure you're lining up the screws. There is a seal on the back here. You want to make sure that's still in there as well. I don't think it'll come out on you, but it's always worth checking. Just line up your screws. Now, what we're going to do is obviously add, as you're adding the screws in, we are going to be adding some thread lock. Make sure you give it a good shake when applying. And we're going to go in a star pattern, so let's call it top left, bottom right, top right, bottom left, and just add in equal pressure as you're tightening up. So just add a little bit of thread lock to the screw head. What you can do essentially is, you've got a little plastic packet or something, is put the packet down and just add some thread lock on there and dip your screw in. So as you can see, there you go, I've got my thread lock on there now. And then all I'm doing is just a little bit on there. We don't need a lot, because remember, you've got to be able to get this back out again at some point. One at a time. There's one. And then we go bottom right now, as I remember, star pattern. And just to kind of reiterate, this isn't an isolated case. Whereas a lot of people will say to you, and a friend of mine just mentioned it to me when I was talking to him, these trucks are brought to you as ready to runs. Correct, yes, I agree. But ready to run, guys, essentially, you might have something at factory level. Let's say you've got someone in a factory who's putting a truck together, and they've wellied a screw in really quickly. They're not going to take that screw back out, because time is money to them, obviously. So buy a little bit of TLC here, and just you checking over everything. You're going to have a good experience on first use. What you don't want further down the line is taking the truck out, losing all differential fluid out of your truck, and then obviously all your gears destroyed. So simple process, screw by screw, like so, and then you want to go down so far, and then just one at a time, do it by hand, like so. Right, I'm going to pause, I'm going to carry on with this, and I'll see you in a second. Right, so as you can see, there's the differential, guys. Make sure there's a nice movement on the diff as you turn it. Now what we're going to do here is at the back of the case, obviously there is another bunch of screws. We are going to take one out at a time and just thread lock these in, because these can come loose as well. All right, so it's all well and good concentrating on the front where you're putting the diff oils in, but if you're not checking these ones, what might happen, it's further down the line, is these screws come apart. Again, thread lock these in as we did earlier on, and I am only taking one out at a time. So there was a little bit of thread lock on there, not a great deal, so I'm just going to dip it in there and then make sure this, as I say, then do this before you use your truck, so 24 hours before, and let the thread lock cure up. All right, I have got a quick setting one myself. It says 15 minutes, but even myself with this one, I would recommend leaving it 24 hours. So we've done one. I'm going to carry on do the rest of them here, and then we'll put the truck back together, and then we'll move on to another part.
Osynlig för blotta ögat, men med påtaglig närvaro.
Right, centre diff is all back in, guys. As I say, it was quite essential that we did that. Just to recap, we have topped it up at 250,000. We've re-thread locked the screws. Everything is all working fine here now. Centre diff is working as it should do. We're going to now move on to the front diff and the rear diff. Now, look, front and rear diff are essentially the same thing. What we're going to do is let's go with the front to start off. There are a bunch of screws you're going to need to loosen off. Obviously the bumper, you've got two up top here and then two on top of the bumper there. Underneath there then is a series of screws to get it out, just like every other Team Corally, because of the way the skids work. Then, so looking at it here, you've got 2 mil at the back of the chassis here, and then 2.5s in the front and the rear of the diff case. And that will give you access then to the front of the diff case, which I believe, if I remember rightly, on these, there's a total of 4. Once you've done all that, you then need to loosen one screw off to loosen off the shock here. So obviously, one of your drive shafts actually slip out, and then you'll be able to remove your front and rear diff. And it's essentially the same with the rear, just a slightly different bumper. Obviously, a bunch of screws to take that out. I'm going to go ahead now and remove these screws. I'll put you back on a time-lapse, bit of music, because there's nothing really for me to show you other than removing a bunch of screws here. When we get the diff open, I can then show you, the state of play when it comes to should you be checking them, should you not. The centre diff was essential, definitely. The front and rears, fingers crossed, they're all topped up and everything is fine. Again, this time around though, because you're taking the differentials out, I would recommend you using like a lithium grease around the gearing, just to keep them running smooth on the crown and pinion. I'll put you back on time lapse now and we'll carry on. Right, okay, so we have the front differential. As you can see, what I've done is move the shocks out of the way, and this will give me now access to this front diff. So just moving the differential out. As you can see, they use plenty of grease, always nicely greased up, I will say that, and they also had 2 shims on the crown side. So obviously you can see, but there's the shims, so we're going to leave those on. What we now want to do is obviously move the chassis out of the way, guys. As you can see, there's how we got at it, and there's all the screws that we used. Now, some people might call this over the top. Look, as I just proved with the centre diff, a little bit of TLC will actually get you a long way when it comes to these trucks. Just making sure that everything is A-OK before you use it for the first time, and the truck will perform a lot better, especially if you've got empty diffs. Empty differentials are going to cause your vehicle to handle in a funny fashion. So just looking there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 screws in total. So I need to open that up, obviously, and then plop it back in there. The differential fluid we need for this, according to the manual, is 20k. What I might possibly do is go up ever so slightly to 30, and then on the rear, just go a little bit lighter, and that will allow the back of the truck to maneuver around a lot better as well. So I'm just going to open that up, put you back on a time lapse, and then I'll come straight back to you. Right, okay guys, so I'm glad I've opened the front diff up, just inspecting it here. It does need topping up, all right, as you can see. I'm just going to top this up now with, I've got 30k. All right, so essentially there's the 20k that's in there, what is left, and then I'm just going to top it up with 30 just to give it a little bit thicker. With this, again, same thing. You obviously let the diff fluid settle down. I'm going to do it this way. There you go. Nice big blob in there, like so. And I'm just going to let that settle down and all the bubbles come out. Now, the beauty of this, obviously with the plastic cases on the front and rear, is you don't need to add thread lock this time around. You only need thread lock, obviously, for your centre diff. So I'm going to go, I have got 10k here for the rear, so I'm going to top it up with the standard fluid, but I've just gone slightly thicker on the front. Right, so I'm going to let this all settle down and come straight back. Right, okay guys, so front diff is done, centre diff is done. I'm now going to do the rear off camera, all right? And then I want to concentrate and take you through setting up your droop on your car. Quite important, something I think is definitely going to benefit on this truck, because there is a lot of droop on the rear and the front of this vehicle. Now, as I mentioned, loads of people are saying about the truck being a little bit tippy over. Well, if you think about it, with the amount of ride height it's got, guys, as it leans into a corner, especially with the extra weight of a short course body on top, it will cause it. If you've got grippy tyres, high ride height and weight up top, the truck will kind of lean over and want to turn over. So by eliminating a little bit of preload on the shocks and a little bit of droop then on the front and the rear, what we can do is essentially dial the car in a little bit better. I'm not going to really touch the shocks too much. What I will do is open up one of them and just check the fluids are okay. And then we'll move on to ESC and obviously changing the values on the ESC, e.g. your low voltage cutoff and also your BEC values as well. Okay, so we'll carry on now. I'm going to do this off camera. Next part is, and we'll then move on to the suspension. Right, okay, so as you can see, the truck is all back together. The rear diff did need topping up, the centre diff did need topping up, and so did the front. Okay, we also re-Loctited the screws because of the metal diff case. So that's all been sorted now. So this next section, we're going to concentrate on handling, guys. Okay, and this will actually allow the short course truck. Now, these tips with the short course was picked up from Mark Santamaria on YouTube, very popular YouTuber, and someone I actually watch a lot of. And Mark does a lot of short course racing, so if you want your truck to slide around and be a little bit more stable, what you want to concentrate on, you guys, essentially is making the front a little bit firmer. All right, so when you dive into a corner, basically the front of the car would naturally dive down on a short course. So what you want it to do is these shocks to be a little bit stiffer. So what we're going to do is, as you can, let me just explain to you, is take some of the droop away from the front. Now, as you can see, it's quite an adverse angle on the shocks here, on your suspension arm. So if you can see where the drive shaft is here, okay, what we want to do is essentially take away some of that droop. So the drive shaft is a little bit straighter, not as sort of acute angle like this one. And so we're going to take out some of the droop. Now, how we do this is this. Inside, I don't know if you can see, hang on, let me see if I can go around this side. Can I show it to you? Can I show it to you with a question? Ah, right, okay, just inside there, see a little screw? So these are your droop screws, guys, all right? You can just about see, there you go, see at the back, just underneath where the outdrive is. There's a screw there that goes down to the bottom of your chassis. What we're going to do is get a 2mm screwdriver, here. I'm just going to go into the top here, like so, into the screw. Let's see if I can do it. There you go. So we're just inside like so, as you can see, and we're just going to tighten up the droop. So one righty tighty. I'm trying to do this with one hand. We're going to just bring up the angle of these suspension arms just a touch. Right, now, so if you look, see this arm here now is higher than this one. Okay, but we've still got a little bit of an angle going on, so I'm going to now match that. For me is roughly about right. Okay, and we're now going to match this side. I'm going to pause 2 secs. So as you can see, I've roughly got them about the same. Okay, both sides. What I'm also going to do is take away just a little bit of the preload on the shocks. Not a great deal. All right, let's loosen that off a little bit. So we still have nice soft shocks, as you can see. A bit more here. Okay, so they kind of match in there. You can see the angle on the drive shaft is nowhere near as bad. I might do a little bit more on this side here. But bouncing back to the rear of the vehicle, as you can see, is a very, very acute angle going on here. So what I possibly will do here is make the back soft though, okay? So you want to kind of leave the front, as you can see, look at the way that back wheel is hanging down. All right. So I'm gonna take away some of the angle here, all right, with the droop screws. You'll probably be able to there you go. You can see them a little bit better there. All right. And there's one on this side. And then what I'm going to do is going to move these rear shocks to the outer position. So it'll remain with the shocks being nice and soft, but we've removed some of this droop there. And this will actually help the car when you dive into a corner. Essentially, the truck will be a lot firmer and less tippy, because you've taken away some of the ride height, so the centre of the gravity's gone down. The front of the suspension will allow that compression as you dive into a corner. And then on the rear, we've taken away some of the ride height, but we softened the shocks up, so which will allow the truck to slide a little bit better at the same time. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'll come straight back. Okay, so what we've gone with you guys, as you can see, this is the front now. All right. So nice and level on the arms. There is a slight angle, but nowhere near as bad as it was. And on the rear, as you can see, it's nowhere near as bad as it was. A little tip for you here as well. There are 2 shock positions, as you can see there. All right. Let me just get down with the camera. And I've gone with the upper holes. Now, the reason behind which, all right, is what I want the rear shocks to do is be able to react quickly. So with a shock that's on more of an angle, you get more of a progressive suspension. So e.g. on the front, it kind of makes sense because obviously we want to stiffen up the front a little bit. And then on the rear, I've loosened the shocks up by standing them up more, and that will allow the truck to slide a little bit better. But what you're asking the truck to do is essentially remain as much contact with the tyre on the floor. Now, once you've done all this setup, all right, I would recommend you go and get a battery, plonk it inside, and then see where the truck is lying. I have added some preload to the front of the shocks, and on the rear, I've actually taken some preload out of it, okay? So I'm going to get a battery and show you now. Right, okay, so this is the biggest battery I've got, guys, the 6S battery, which will obviously go into this truck. Now, way I would normally test out my suspension, all right, is essentially by putting my heaviest battery in the truck like so. And what we want to do now is essentially give it a bit of a drop, all right? And I've noticed that front end just needs a little bit more preload on there because it's not returning as quick as I'd like. So I'm just going to add a touch more. So try and keep them about the same. That seems a bit better. Right. Okay, so the truck feels nice and compliant. Now we have taken some ride height away. Let's just quickly put the body back on. Like so. Now bear in mind, it is a basher this, guys, okay? But what should happen now is the front end of the, there you go, feels a lot better. And we've actually taken out some of the ride height out of the arches as well. But that should slide around lovely now. Very nice. So what we've done, let's just get this straight. We have adjusted the droop on the front. All right. We've adjusted the droop on the rear. We've pushed the shocks out to make the rear shocks react a little bit quicker. The front has been stiffened up somewhat. So that will now help me with cornering. Just a little tip there, guys. I mean, obviously it was a long way of doing it. I'm obviously trying to explain to you guys, but fingers crossed from that you should get a nice handling short course track. Now, yes, all right, we could dial it in a bit further if these turnbuckle camber links and obviously steering links were adjustable, obviously, but this is a basher. All right, what we gonna do now, let's think. So we've done the differentials, we've done all the suspension geometry. I'm gonna dive into the ESC. Now the only thing is, here, as you can see, with the batteries I use EC5s. All right, so I'm gonna have to swap these out to EC5s as well, and then we're gonna dive into the program of the ESC and we should be done. I hope obviously this video is somewhat helpful towards people as well, so you get an idea on how to make your truck work properly straight out of the box, and maybe pick up some tuning tips along the way. Right, let's move on. Right, okay, bonus prizes here, guys. Okay, so what I have done off camera, or sorry, on time lapse, is I have added a singular EC5 because I'll only be using a single 6S pack. Now, inside the wheels, all right, you have these little 2mm hex screws. Let me show you. Now, these are holding your stub axles in. All right, as you can see on the camera there. You're going to want to make sure that you've got a little bit of thread locker. I would go around all your wheels and just add a little bit of thread locker in on this nut there. This will keep your stub axles in. All right, and for bonus prizes, there you go. Quite easy, quite simple to do. No real hassle. There you go. For bonus prizes, you can use the stock wheel nuts, but me personally, I'm going to use an enclosed wheel nut on the car, and that way, should these grub screws come out, they're contained by the wheel nut. All right, and it stops damage to your hexes as well at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and fit them on the car, and go ahead and do this. And I think we're ready to start programming then, guys. Like I say, I have changed over to the EC5. We're going to plug the programmer in and go from there. See you in a second. Right, okay, guys. So the car is all set up now. I put my Radio Link handset in there. Now, what I'm about to show you is the same on any car, all right? At the back here, obviously, you've got the power button. You want to hold the set. Now, what we're doing here is calibrating the endpoints on the throttle, the brake and the neutral. It doesn't matter whether you've got it on a different handset or anything like that, or whether you're using the stock handset. This will be exactly the same. So we're going to hold the set button, turn the car on, listen to the beeps. We're going to press once for neutral, throttle, and then brake. Now it's registered 6S. turn the wheels. So as you can see, all working in that sense. I'm going to set up now the programmer, and we're just going to have a look at the programming. But as I mentioned, this will be exactly the same for whether it's I'm using a different handset, whether you're using a stock handset there. It's all the same, okay? So everything's the same as you see. I've got steering, everything's fine there. I'm going to set the endpoints for the steering. Again, that's something that I'll do myself. We're going to plug the programmer in now. Right, so I've got the Hobbywin program card connected to the ESC, guys, okay? So you need to go to page 4 of your manual, and we are looking. So what I want to do here is low voltage cut off. I'm going to keep that to the middle option, which is intermediate. I'm going to go down to option 7 to the BEC, and we're going to change that to 7.4. Currently comes with 6 volts. And anything else I want to do here, blah, 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 blah. Let's have a look. Brake for reverse force, leave that the same. Punch, I'm going to go up to level 4, I think, from 3. So let's turn the car on. As you can see, program card is now working. So let's go to option 7. Oh, no, hang on, let me get this right. Yeah, that is right. Right, 7. Change that to value 2. Press OK. And then we want to go down to item 10 and change that to number 4. Oh, no. Let's try again. Down to 7, I believe. That's right. You change that to value 2. Press OK. Then down to 10. And then we go value. Change that to number 4 and press OK. So that should now be programmed. Everything else should be fine. Let's turn that off. Disconnect the wire. I'm going to put the fan back in. And you'll notice straight away, because the fan will spin up a lot quicker. So we're just going to plug obviously this back into the fan port. Make sure you are plugging that back in, obviously, because otherwise your ESC will not. Let's turn it on. And straight away the fan is spinning up. You should also notice your steering is now a lot faster. Alright, so we have done the diffs. We have programmed the ESC. I have checked the droop. I've set the suspension up. That's all fine. I'm now going to go ahead and set my endpoints on my radio link. That's because obviously I'm using this handset. But overall the car is now ready. As you can see, I've also fitted a gyro to it, which is part of the receiver. So that will help with the way the car drives. Definitely got some wheel speed there, so I'm very much looking forward to giving this one a rip. Oh, by the way, we obviously Loctite the screws in the hexes, and I added some wheel nuts on there. But overall, this should be ready to rock and roll now. I'm going to go ahead and just finish up a few things, and I'll see you up top. Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so the Team Corally Shiroi, as I mentioned to you, it's all set up now. If you stuck through the video, you know, good on you, because fingers crossed your truck should run well as if you followed what I've done. We have removed, obviously, preload off the rear of the suspension. We've set all the droop. Obviously, that will stop the truck from essentially sitting too high and then, as you're coming into a corner, dive in. We've done the same with the front. We've essentially added a load of preload on the front and then set the droop on the front. Differentials, we've covered those. Obviously, it was quite good that we did go into them, and the reason behind which, obviously, the centre diff was a little bit leaky out of the factory. As I mentioned, that could be from shipping. Obviously, the cabin pressure of where the vehicles are sent to us, that could obviously cause that centre diff to leak. Added a little bit more Loctite in with the screws, everything's fine there. Tuned the front diff, tuned the rear diff. We have turned the BEC value up and the punch on the ESC. Added some wheel nuts. That is my preference, why I've done that, and pure and simply that's just to keep some of the dirt and muck out of the stub axles. What else? Now, handset. as I say, I use a radio link handset. The reason is pure and simply because it takes out any sort of differences in me using the handset. E.g., if, for example, I was to leave a stock handset on every single vehicle, when I go to pick up the car, all right, I straight away I'm thinking about the handset more than I am the vehicle. So now there's two things for me. Is one, all my cars are all on the same handset. Two, I can do some tuning on the fly with this one as well. And obviously, as the car is driving, I can kind of get it in the straight line if I need to, dial all my trims in, my endpoints, I could turn the dual rate down. But also, it takes out that learning curve. So I can now tell you exactly how the truck feels, how it's performing, how, you know, you get a good feel for it. So there's that. I hope this video was helpful for some of you, all right? Like I say, it was a bit of a longer video. As you know, I set up all my trucks, and it's a good habit for other people to get into as well, because as I say, coming out of the factory, some vehicles might have, let's say, a screw loose, or e.g. like a diff leak, or you know, there's numerous different things you should be checking out for, rather than taking the truck out, sending it to the moon, driving it as hard as you can, and then blaming obviously the manufacturer for the problem. Now, in how can we put it, in best case, you know, a truck comes out of a factory and nothing at all needs looking at, you know, but that doesn't happen in the hobby. Ready to run vehicles should always be checked over, because they're mass produced. Now, if you're putting together like a kit build or something like that, fair enough, that's you doing it, but you're reliant on someone else, so you're taking out that kind of hoping that that person in the factory has had a good day and everything's fine, he's gone home with a smile on his face on Friday. Right. Next up is obviously the first run of this truck. I will be taking it to a couple of different locations, probably Garth Park, I'd imagine. We're going to take it to Dusty, a few tarmac runs, and just really get to know the vehicle and how it performs. I hope you enjoyed the video. I want to say a huge thank you for obviously following me with the channel, guys. All the likes, shares and subscribes go on. Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for obviously your support with the channel. Just give me a thumbs up. You know, a thumbs up is all I need, and it helps me with the algorithm, and thank you, honestly. Till next time, check the box more videos. Stay awesome. I'll catch you later. Thanks, guys.